Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a Cerakote job on a 6.8 SPC AR. It's going to be a duotone, FDE and black, and going to go through the whole process. It's going to take a little while, but I should have it all on one video. So today we're going to begin with going through what the customer dropped off for the assembly of the rifle and making sure that we have all the parts there. And once we've done that, we'll be able to separate them into the different colors and prepare for sandblasting. So once we get everything separated and get everything disassembled that needs to be disassembled, our first step is going to be to degrease it, and we'll get that degreasing done and then sandblast and then spray and dry. So we'll get started with just like I said, piecing everything together so that we can go through it, make sure that we've got everything that's going to be required for the assembly before we get started. We don't want to get it Cerakoted and then find out that something's missing. So we'll go through that first. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is get everything out that the customer brought us and make sure that we've got everything required for the rifle. This job includes assembly of the rifle after we're finished, so we want to make sure that we have all the components required before we get started on any of the sandblasting or Cerakoting. So that should be everything. We will have to disassemble the lower, of course, disassemble the upper. Everything else is in the upper, so I'll have to disassemble that. The lower, disassemble the lower. Trigger group, springs for the trigger group, barrel, gas, block, gas tube, muzzle brake. I'll disassemble this lower, go from there. I'll get back. All right, well, I got the lower disassembled now. Now we'll disassemble this upper and be right back. Now it's separated into different color categories. All right, so now we've gotten everything broken down into its individual pieces, and we're ready to separate the different colors before we get ready to sandblast them. I'm going to separate them into groups: the FDE, the black, and the what we're not going to Cerakote. So I'll show you all that here. All right, so here's everything broken down into its individual pieces. And yes, everything has to be broken down as far as it will go. We've got to degrease it before we sandblast it, and the only thing that can't be broken down into its individual pieces is the dust cover. The way it's assembled, it's a blind punch pin right there that you can't be removed. So other than that, everything else is broken down into its individual pieces. And like I said, we'll separate it now into what's going to be black and what's going to be FDE. And then this is what's not going to be Cerakoted. All right, so now we've got everything separated into the two groups, one for the FDE, one for the black, a little bit of back and forth with the customer to get everything situated. And now we've got that done. So everything in this group is going to be graphite black, and everything in this group is going to be flat dark earth. All right, so what we're going to do next is start sandblasting this stuff. I've separated it into two different groups, one for the FDE and one for the black. And what I'm going to do next is basically degrease the parts. So I've got a small tank with acetone in it, and I will submerge the parts in acetone for a few minutes, and then take them out, let them dry out, air dry, make sure that there's no contaminants left on the surface, and then put them in the sandblast cabinet and sandblast them. So since I've got all of the pieces disassembled, it should be fairly quick and easy. Basically, we're just trying to make sure that there's no grease or contaminants, oils on the metals, so that we don't contaminate our sand in our sandblast cabinet. If you've got any oils on the surface of the parts when you go to Cerakote it, it's not going to adhere properly. So it's important that when you sandblast it, there's no contaminants in your sandblasting cabinet that could contaminate the surface. So before it goes in the sandblasting cabinet, we're going to make sure that it's degreased with the acetone. And like I said, it should be fairly quick and easy. Basically, the only oils and grease on there are going to be from my fingerprints and those kind of things. This gun was not assembled prior to us disassembling everything, so there shouldn't be that much oil on there, except what might have been on some of the parts when they came out of the packaging from the factory. And so just a quick dip in the acetone, 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, soak with the parts, and then let them air dry, and that should be fine. I'll double check it. Now the plastic parts are a little different. All of the plastic parts that we're doing for this project are Magpul stuff, and I've done quite a bit of the Magpul plastic, and I know that the acetone is not going to melt it, especially if it's just a few minutes or a quick dunk. And the plastic, I will just make it a quick dunk. I'll just dunk it in there, leave it for 30 seconds to a minute, pull it back out, let it air dry. You know, you have to be careful of some of the other plastics if you're going to do some plastics, that the acetone won't melt the plastic. It will melt almost any plastic if you leave it in there long enough. So depending on what type of plastic it is and how hard it is, you don't want to leave it in that acetone too long at all. Also, when we go to sandblast, we'll turn down the pressure on the sandblaster for the plastic. We'll sandblast that at a lower pressure than we will the metal parts. So I'll go out there and do that now. I'll give them a quick dip in the acetone and then let them air dry, and then get ready to sandblast. All right, just so you can see here what I've done, I've basically separated everything into the two different color, as though it's basically two different projects at this point. So we're gonna have everything here is black, everything here is FDE, and I'll keep them separate from here on out. So what I'll do first is I'll go and give these a quick dip in the acetone, and then start sandblasting them. All right, so this is my acetone tank here. You don't have to have a tank. You can, as long as it's something that the acetone's not going to eat through. So we're just going to give everything a quick dip. That's all of our metal pieces. Everything else is plastic, so we're going to let that metal soak for about 5-10 minutes. Okay, now we've removed these parts from the acetone bath, and we will let them air dry for a few minutes and then go straight to the sandblast cabinet. Alright, so from here on out, every time we handle any of this stuff, we're going to be wearing gloves just to keep from getting any contaminants, any oils from our fingers and hands on any of this. So let that finish air drying in the sandblast cabinet while we give this plastic a quick soak. All right, so there's our plastic parts. All right, so just a couple of things on that part of the process. Number one, since I'm letting those parts air dry the rest of the way inside the sandblast cabinet, I'm not going to mess with that for a while, probably several hours, and that's why I let it do that. I wouldn't suggest getting acetone fumes inside your sandblaster and then turning the sandblaster on. Could be a big problem. So that's one thing. The next thing is if you do have parts that are contaminated with oil, more than just fingerprints, but actually, a decent amount of oil or grease or parts that you couldn't get broken down into their single components, and they're going to have oils and grease where they're connected, then you may have to do what's called gassing out, which is where you soak the parts in the acetone 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You take them out of the acetone and actually hang them in your oven, in your dryer, with some heat to pull the moisture, pull the oil out of the metal, and then give them another bath in the acetone, pull them out, go back to the oven, And you may have to do that several times for the acetone to penetrate the oil and then the heat to draw the oil out. Acetone, heat. That's why I intentionally make sure that I break everything down to its single component so that there's no areas for oils to get trapped in there. All right, so the next process on those parts is going to be sandblasting. I'm going to try to get to that either this afternoon or tomorrow, and I'll see you then. Bye. All right, so here we are outside, and this is where I do my spraying. I don't like to spray inside. Too much overspray gets on all of the equipment and just ends up all over everything. It's barely noticeable the first couple times you do it, but after a while it starts to build up on everything, and it's just gets all over everything. So I try to spray outside whenever I can, so typically wait for a decent day. Today's not bad, overcast, not chilly though, and hopefully we'll get out here and get this done before the pollen starts to fall this morning. All right, so this is the gun I use. It's an Iwata. They're not the cheapest things in the world, but they work pretty well. This is the second one I've had. My first one lasted, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. They're like I said, I think they're close to 300, 280 bucks, but it does very well. 0.80 tip, and so I take it apart each time when I'm finished. Not completely broken down, but for the most part, so that I can keep it fairly clean. All right, so this is where I assemble my spray gun, and I do it right here in front of my dip tank because that's where I'm going to end up cleaning it. So what I got right here is a brand new jug of Magpul Flat Dark Earth. brand new catalyst. Now, typically for a satin finish, it's 18 to 1, 18 parts Cerakote, 1 part catalyst. To do the 4 pieces that I've got out here, 36 milliliters of Cerakote and 2 parts catalyst should be sufficient. And typically what I do is I'll mix it in one of these. And what I'll do for this one, I like to mix mine just a little bit below satin finish. So I'll mix 20 to 1. So I'll do 40 milliliters and 2 milliliters of catalyst. And you have to shake this up pretty good. Not, when it's brand new, it's not so bad, but after a couple of weeks, it starts to settle a little bit. And we do have a strainer. And so I typically spray outside just because the overspray when you're inside a shop is a bit much. I always try to spray from one end and then flip the item over, spray in the other direction, make sure we don't miss anything. so here's the FDE part all finished up, and we will get to work on the black and get back with you shortly on that. So here we are after everything's been taken out of the oven and dried. So we've got all of our FDE parts and our black. So I'm gonna get ready to reassemble along with all the other parts that we didn't Cerakote. And I'm not going to do a video for the detailed assembly of the lower. I'm sure there's plenty of videos of that on the internet, so that's what I'm going to do first. Now I did go ahead and check fit the upper and lower. Normally if there's a problem, that's where it's going to be. Typically right here on these rails of the upper and the lower, you have to be really careful not to overcoat those with your Cerakote. or you might have problems fitting them back together. So test fit those, they fit together nicely. So I will assemble the lower first, and I'll come back and show you that, and I'll go ahead and reassemble the magazines, and we'll go from there. Alright, so here's the lower completed. Turned out really nice. So this is the Magpul FDE and graphite black. So as you can see, it turned out really nice. So now we'll assemble the upper. here's the completed upper and the lower. I think it turned out pretty nice. Give me just a second here and I'll put it together for you so you can see. All right, so here it is, all complete. I think it turned out really nice. That FDE and black I think they turned out pretty nice. That is graphite black, by the way. Sorry, it's not just regular black. That's graphite black, which is got a little gray tint to it. It's not a rich dark black. I like it. I think it's one of Cerakote's better blacks, in my opinion. But I think it looks really sharp with that Magpul FDE and the stainless steel barrel. And of course a nice Leopold scope to top it off. So that is it. Let's see if I can get a picture of the whole thing. All right. So, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'll do the best I can to answer any questions. And thanks a lot for watching the video. Bye.